What we wanted to address today is some new policies that we're trying to implement for the 4-H state shows. And these policies are for multiple day events, primarily our English and our Western state shows. And talk a little bit about myself. I am a veterinarian. I'm also the university's extension specialist, but I've grown up showing horses. We do draft horse pulling, we do race horses, and I grew up showing 4-H and FFA as well. But we talk about why we need to implement these policies. First and foremost, we're here to protect the health of the horses that are coming to the shows. We want to make sure that only healthy horses are coming. And the second thing we want to do is we want to teach our youth some good biosecurity skills. We want to teach them good skills that help them prevent the spread of disease. And when we talk about biosecurity, that's really what we're focusing on, is preventing the spread of disease. When we look at our horses and we look at specific diseases that we're trying to prevent the spread of, the most common things that we see at these events are respiratory diseases. We have several viral diseases, such as equine herpes virus, commonly known as rhinopneumonitis in horses. We also have equine influenza virus and equine viral arteritis. Also a very common one is a bacterial disease known as strangles. Streptococcus equi, subspecies equi there in the equine world. Those are all very easily spread. They're very common. We see them. The reason it's a problem is if your horse contracts these diseases, they can be out anywhere from a few days to several weeks with the diseases, and it makes it pretty devastating for a summer or for a show period if your horse gets these diseases. There are a few neurologic diseases that we can see. One that seems to be spread more likely, and it's a very devastating disease, the equine herpes virus that goes neurologic. There are several other neurologic diseases such as Eastern and Western encephalitis and West Nile virus. Those diseases are spread by vectors, by bugs. And so those are not spread either through aerosolization, direct contact, or indirect contact. It's primarily through bugs. I wanted to bring up show you a screen here for a minute. It's called the Equine Disease CC's website, and it's a pretty neat website that you can subscribe to, and it will actually give you updates on diseases across the United States. It will give you outbreak alerts where it can show you whatever disease you want to look for, anywhere from anthrax, botulism. We don't see a lot of those. Primarily what we're seeing now are some herpes virus going around, as well as some West Nile. We see some West Nile going around as well. But this gives you an idea of where to look. We had a West Nile case in Idaho come up just in the last few weeks. Nothing currently in Utah. But if we look at the ones that we worry about primarily, the equine herpes myeloencephalitis, you got to look back and you can look for current records, and you can see within the last year we've had a lot of different outbreaks. The closest ones to us were in Idaho of this year. We had an outbreak going on in a couple of different counties in Idaho. It got to the point where we shut down the university here. We did not allow any outside horses to come into the university because we were worried about them bringing the disease into our herd here. That's the why. We're worried about bringing diseases in, potentially fatal diseases such as the equine herpes myeloencephalitis from the equine herpes virus. Some toolkits that we have is there was a group that got together in 2012 and put together a biosecurity toolkit for equine events. And that's primarily what we've used as a resource when we started making these policies. If we get to if we look at why, and here's the reference for that toolkit if anybody's interested. But we look at what started all this happened, and it was actually in our back door in Ogden, Utah. In 2011, one horse came down and exposed over 2,000 horses at one event. There were 19 different states involved, over 242 different premises that were exposed. 90 different horses ended up being tested positive, and 13 of those 90 died or were euthanized. And it was because of that event that they went and put together that toolkit to give us some idea of what we can do to prevent disease. And so if we look at why these horse shows, why we're worried about them, we have the potential for a perfect storm. We have a lot of different infectious agents that are naturally present in the environment or in our community with horses. They can be brought in by carrier horses. The horses appear normal, but they are actually carrying the bug that will cause that disease. As we take horses to these events, they do become stressed, and they are more prone to sickness when they become stressed. And then the environment there, we have a lot of commingling. We bring horses from all over. We stable them in the same place. They're close in really close environments in those stables. They can touch noses. And we really have had a lack of biosecurity at these events. So recommendations that we're making when these events are being planned, we would love to involve a local veterinarian in that planning process. We want someone who will be available for on call of these events, so that we know who to call. They're committed to being there and responding in a timely fashion. We also recommend that these events designate a safety officer, somebody who is going to be in charge of the health of these horses. So somebody who's committed to be there throughout the entire event, somebody who has the authority to refuse admittance of any horse to the event, that has a place for isolation if a disease breaks out during the event. And it's this individual that will call the veterinarian. That way we won't have 4 or 5 different people calling the veterinarian. It's one person that will call the veterinarian and make charge, and be in charge of that event if there's a sick horse. That safety officer does not have to be a veterinarian. It's somebody who is familiar with horses, able to recognize the symptoms of a sick horse, but that the people planning that event have to give them that authority and stand behind them when they make a decision. Some things that we're looking at, and I hope most of you have had an opportunity to see, whoops, pushed the wrong button there. Get that back up. To see the recommendations that we're making, as well as the policy changes that we're making for the 4-H state event. And this is an email that was sent out a few weeks ago. So hopefully you've had that opportunity to look through it. And we'll have some time here in just a bit for some questions about it. But specific recommendations. We want all of the horses that are going to attend these events to have at least the flu rhino shot. Those are the ones that we're going to require. We want it within 6 months of the event, at least 2 weeks prior to the event. If they're vaccinating those horses the day before the event, really not giving that horse an opportunity to mount an immune response before they come. We also are going to require a certificate of veterinary inspection, and that we're going to require that the veterinarian have the horse's temperature written on the certificate, so that we know that the temperature of that horse was taken while at the veterinarian's office. We are also going to require documentation that these owners have taken the temperature of their horses 3 days before the event. So if the event's on Friday, they took it Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning of that event. So we know that horse has not spiked a fever in the preceding 3 days before the event. Anything over 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit will not be allowed at the event. Any horse that has an elevated temperature while at the event will be examined by a veterinarian at the owner's expense. What we're trying to do is just ensure that no sick horses are coming to these events. Any horse that is exhibiting clinical signs such as nasal discharge, elevated temperature, coughing, difficulty breathing, or just not doing right, if they are going to come to the event with those symptoms, they have to have written veterinary approval. Primarily what we're talking about there is the coughing, because we know there are several horses that have allergies to dust and they cough quite often. And we don't want to exclude those horses. We're just trying to make sure that those horses are definitely looked at prior to coming. The veterinarian has said, I'm sure this horse does not have a contagious disease, and it's okay for this horse to be commingling with other horses. I cannot imagine a veterinarian looking at a horse with nasal discharge and an elevated temperature and say, yeah, this horse is free of contagious diseases. We're going to rely on the professional conduct of our veterinarians to make sure that that's okay. The rest of the presentation just talks about vaccinations and some of our biosecurity. So what I thought here is let's just open it up now for a few minutes for some questions that you may have.
So if you have a question, you can ask it by unmuting your microphone on your phone or on your in the software on your computer, or you can type it into the chat box. So any questions?
I guess I have one. We'll start off with. Well, I was just wondering, do you anticipate veterinarians wanting to charge to be at the shows, and about how much it would be if they did want to charge?
I do not expect veterinarians to do this for free. I do not expect them to, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen because my PowerPoint did actually freeze up on me. But we do not expect them to do it for free. Just thinking about what they would charge, if it was me, we would charge primarily a farm call, which was anywhere from $45. I've heard some was $60. An exam on the horse can be upwards of $50, $35 to $50. There's quite a range there. I know several veterinarians, and myself as well, if I'm at a 4-H event, they will generally charge less because it is for the 4-H, but I'm not going to hold anyone to that. Does that answer it for you, Ben?
Yeah, thank you.
Some of the other things, I guess, are there any other questions? I can wait for a moment.
Yeah, Karl, so where did they sort of get that number on the temperature? Was it 101.5? Obviously, yep. Different species have different temperatures, but where did they sort of get that?
Well, the normal temperature of a horse is around 99 degrees, anywhere from 99 to 100 degrees. So we figure anything over 101.5 is an elevated temperature indicating an infection of some sort. Also, with a lot of these diseases, an elevated temperature is one of the primary symptoms or signs that the horse is coming down with an illness. So that's where we're trying to look there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Karl, were you done? I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You run one of these video things and you don't, I was thinking of reading and then listening and I thought you had paused. I apologize if you weren't done, but
that's great.
The text, somebody texted in and said, oh, it looks like it's Jane, said, will these requirements be in place immediately?
Yes, we have the English show coming up at the end of August, and those, and these are for multiple day events that we're talking about, and we will be implementing these policies for the English show coming up here at the end of August, and for the Western show that is occurring in September in Vernal.
And so maybe I don't know. But so it's with the state shows. So it's the state 4-H sponsored shows. Is that correct, Karl?
Correct. That's where these policies are being implemented. We make recommendations for all of the local shows. They do not seem to be multiple day events. However, some of the 4-H shows are. And if they're stabling overnight, we would definitely encourage these individuals to have the same kind of policies at their local shows. But we are going to enforce these at the state shows that are coming up.
And Karl, when you say enforce, so let's say I've got a 4-H kid that shows up and they've not followed these, are they going to be turned away? What do you mean by enforcement? That sort of has like I'm going to put handcuffs on them or something, right? So,
well, what's going to happen, and we've talked about it with both the English and the Western up here on campus, and what we've decided is there is a check-in station where people are going to have to show their documentations. If they do not have those documentations, then we will we'll show them to a different place, kind of out on an isolation place. And before they can be registered and receive their number, we're going to have to contact a veterinarian to come out and examine the horses at the owner's expense before they will be able to be registered and receive their number.
okay.
So no, we are not going to turn them away and say you have to go home, but they are going to have a veterinarian come out to the facility there and provide the appropriate documentation.
So that leads into another chat question here that said, a few people have expressed concern that this policy is an added cost to 4-H families. Do you have any suggestions on the financial side of this? Megan asked that. Megan asked that, yeah.
Yes, they're as a practicing veterinarian, many times I would go out to clubs and different shows and be able to offer advice to people, but I also offered services at discounted rates to these 4-H students. So what we encourage people to do is the leaders need to contact veterinarians and say, hey, we need these things. We need this paperwork for all of these horses. Can you come to a certain location and do all of them all at once? So individual families are not paying a farm call each time or an office visit each time. It's just one time and everybody's combined. It doesn't have to be an official certificate of veterinary inspection. It can be a piece of paper that the veterinarian says, I have examined this horse. He is free of contagious diseases. The temperature is this, and sign it. That way we know that the horse has been examined and the veterinarian signature is good there. We encourage you, though, to do it as a group. That way that the veterinarian can come do it all at the same time, and that will decrease the cost.
Thank you, Karl. Boyd, out for the Western show, made a comment here about who will be liable if someone's horse gets sick. I'm not clear, Boyd, here. You want to unmute and ask this one because I don't understand what you're saying or asking.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, Boyd.
Okay. So we were discussing this earlier this week as we were preparing for the Western show. The folks here at Western Park were concerned that if somebody's horse gets sick and somebody wants to be so happy about saying, oh, you didn't follow the procedure, and who's going to be liable? They just want to let you know that the counties, Western Park, we won't accept any liability for something going wrong with the system, going wrong with the process. And so we had Jesse here who was answering for USU saying, no, we don't expect that the counties or the park, the facilities will accept any liability for that kind of a thing. And that's the question we're coming to is, when we step up and say, okay, we're doing we're doing this to protect horses, but something fails, there's, I guess, an implication. The attorneys think there's an implication of liability.
Well, my question for you now, Boyd, is what happens now at these shows if a horse comes up sick? Who's accepting liability now? And the reason that we put these in place is though we can show that we have a plan to say we are doing all we can to stop the spread of disease. And so I agree. I would say that, and I'm asking you guys that too, by implementing these policies, are we accepting responsibility for the health of all of these horses?
And Western Park saying is, okay, this is what you're doing. Therefore, if there is a liability, you're accepting the liability for it. And we're comfortable with that as long as you know that the facility isn't accepting the responsibility for it. Although there could be some shared liability because things like designation of where the holding pens are and how they are handled may be a facility thing, but it's just kind of that's some of the question. I heard you say something also that was a little bit different than what I think we understood from Jesse on Tuesday evening, and that is if somebody comes in without the veterinary certificate, without the temps, that they will have to call on a vet to get those. That might not be a workable logistics thing to get done. It may have to be you do it, and if you have to charge them, you have to charge them, or because I don't know that. I just don't know how that's going to work.
And I understand that concern there, Boyd. What we're thinking is we send all of those horses to a designated spot, and they have to wait there until the veterinarian is available to come and do it. I am going to be there, and I am a licensed veterinarian, and so we'll try to work through this as best as we can, and we'll try to do that. I want to be careful that people don't think they can show up to the event without their work, and because I'm there, I'll do it and not charge them.
Well, I think that's wise because otherwise everybody will just do that.
Exactly. And I have a conflict of interest if I then charge them because I am an employee of the university and I can't charge them. What do we do with the money that we then charge them? Who does that get paid to? So I want to be very careful with that, and I don't want to cause that conflict of interest. And so my idea is that we will call the veterinarian and he'll come out and charge them regular amounts. It may be more than what they would have done at home. So there is that concern.
The other thing that came up in that meeting is we will likely have people showing up in the middle of the night with their horses.
Yep.
And so somebody will probably have to be here to deal with them because they will unload their horses if we're not here.
Yep. And we've discussed that. So we've talked about addressing that within our committee.
And I think there may be some other issues that I can't think of exactly right now. I think we worked through, we said, we'll be comfortable doing this. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of mistrust, lack of trust, that if people are self-certifying, if they know what the restrictions are, wonder how effective it will be, because they'll, if they know what the temperature needs to be on the horse and they report it. Now, when the first document we got from you says that they not only have to have the 3 days, including the morning of the show, but they'll have to take the temperatures each day, each morning of the show.
Yes.
If that's going to be done. It's a matter of trusting them that they're going to report, and there's surely lots of opportunity for dishonesty. If they know what the temperature has to be, it'll be 101.4.
And I understand that, and And I agree with you.
Or 98 or 99 or whatever it has to be.
The thing that we're looking at here, Boyd, is we're trying to teach the youth, and we can't govern what parents teach their youth or their leaders teach their youth. So if it's dishonesty, then that's what they're teaching them. The other thing that we're trying to do is provide some sort of insurance that these horses are healthy. If we don't do anything and something comes up and sick horse and disease spreads, then we're much more liable than if we don't have some sort of plan in place.
Karl, we've got a couple of comments here, and I encourage everybody to get that chat box open and read. We've got some comments and some opinions that are coming in, and we're not going to have time to read all these, but there are a couple of questions here, and Kim suggests that, or who's going to send this protocol out? Was it sent out earlier in the week? And how are we going to get copies of this? Because he'd like to share this with his youth.
Yeah, Jessie responded to that. She sent it out a few weeks ago. We can definitely send it again. So Jessie Hadfield has been part of this, as well as Megan Hendricks, that they've been part of implementing these policies as well.
Is there a place we can direct them? Do they have to get it by email, or is there a 4-H website that they can go to and download the documents? And maybe Jessie can jump in here.
I believe they're posted online. I will check real quick and put the link in the box, but they should be on our Utah 4-H website.
Okay, so Kim and others, we can direct folks to the state 4-H website. We'll get a link here for you, and then it looks like Jessie's going to send it out again. So that'd be great. There's another question here about, or a concern. What do we do with other things that aren't, I'm adding into this an editorial, that are not contagious, like underweight horses? Evidently, this individual has had issues before with horses that maybe aren't fit to come. Will that be examined, or does this policy address that?
This policy does not address anything that is not contagious. I understand the problem with underweight horses, that it's not healthy for the horse. It's not teaching good policies there. But this policy is not there for that reason. There's definitely areas there for education and for addressing problems. We can definitely do that. I would hope that by requiring a veterinary inspection, that the veterinarian at that point could talk to these owners and to these kids and say, this is what you need to do to increase the health of your horse. But I would have a hard time requiring a veterinary inspection of an underweight horse that is not exhibiting any of those other clinical symptoms.
Okay, any other questions, either through chat or out loud?
I have a question. This is Carson.
Hi, Carson. Go ahead.
So, Karl, you were talking about, I think, the rhino shot you were saying that needs to be done a certain amount of time before the show.
Yep.
So if they show up without that, and you said getting it the day before is not going to do any good, are they still going to be allowed on the property without that shot?
They will, but they're going to have to pay for a veterinarian to examine the animal and clear it of all signs of clinical disease.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yes, it's going to be cheaper in the long run for them to have it done. If they show up without that shot, they have to be examined by a veterinarian before they can leave there.
So, Karl, let me rephrase that. I think that Carson here is saying that seems a little inconsistent with the policy, in that you're saying that you recommend it be done 2 weeks prior, but if they forget or whatever, so let's say they forget, they show up, they can still have the shot given, but the shot's not going to be protective, right?
Correct. The shot is not protective, but the veterinarian that examines the horse is going to look at them and say, this horse is free of contagious disease.
Perfect. Okay. I think that's what you're asking, right, Carson?
Yeah, that clarifies it. Thank you.
And can I add on to that? we had talked about they have to, when they register their horses, they have to say that these have been done and that they have had their vaccinations and put a date. So if we still have someone come, we're going to do what we can this first year to make sure that it's a smooth process as we're doing this new policy and helping people understand. But in years future, they probably will not be able to register and come to the show if they haven't had their vaccinations done.
Yeah, there was another comment here. It came through Lacey's cell phone, it looks like. That's interesting. I know it's an iPhone 7S. Well, there you go. Anyway, she made a comment like, if you go to some of these other shows, and she mentions a specific one, this is already required, including some other stuff. So I guess her argument, I assume that's a her, this person's argument is that that's kind of what the industry's doing. So.
Yeah, these policies are very consistent with what other shows are doing and are requiring, not just in the equine industry, but also in livestock industry. If you take a steer or a sheep or anything to shows, a lot of times they'll have veterinarians inspect them right there as well.
Any other questions? I think this has been very helpful. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Hoops, and talking to us about this. So as I understand, there'll be a link that they will be sent out to everybody again. There's going to be a link on the 4-H state 4-H website somewhere. And then so far I haven't seen the link show up in the chat box yet, but we can include that link as well in the chat box. So.
Terry, I've got another question for Karl.
You bet.
What do you see? Jessie told us what she see would happen if an animal shows up sick at the state horse show.
Yep.
What are we going to do with it?
We're going to have an area designated where this horse will go into isolation. We're going to try to make this place that is far enough away from other horses, far enough away from traffic, to where it's not going to be exposing a lot of other horses. The veterinarian is going to be called, and the veterinarian is going to have to examine the horse and offer any kind of treatment that's going to be between the owner and the veterinarian at that point. But that horse is not going to be allowed to show if he is sick. That horse is not going to be allowed to free access. It's going to have to be restricted and isolated to a specific place.
And how much isolation will be necessary?
We would like them to be at least 30 feet away from other horses, and definitely no traffic, no foot traffic around it. And individuals that are taking care of that horse obviously need to be taking care of that horse and no other horses as well. There's a lot of different situations that we would think about, Boyd. If it's a single horse that shows up and it's sick, and it's not one of the reportable diseases that we can talk about, then that horse can actually go home. And we don't want them to spread that disease with other horses at home as well. So there's a lot of different situations. But if there's just a lot of different things to think about depending on what disease we're looking at.
Just put this out.
Does that answer it for you, Boyd?
Yeah, but time will tell.
I know.
Experience will tell.
We understand there's going to be a lot of situations we're going to have to think through and see that happens.
So there's another question from Alexi's iPhone, said that you're requiring 2 weeks, so shots 2 weeks before, and then 5 days before health certificate. So the concern here is that maybe that's 2 veterinary visits.
Well, and yes, that is correct. But we're we're hoping that these shots have become part of a normal routine vaccination program for your horse. That is what should be expected of good horse owners. We're hoping that they have implemented this shot with their veterinarian's knowledge prior to this, and it's not something that this is the first time the veterinarian has seen this horse in the first few months. We've also discussed it that vaccine can be given by the owners. It does not have to be administered by the veterinarian. And we require the owners to certify that it's been given and not the veterinarian. It's not required that the veterinarian give it.
So an observation here, Jesse, it's saying that some people haven't gotten this. It was sent out before, these documents. So I'm wondering if it was sent out on the 4-H side, the 4-H leader side, but it didn't go to extension agents. So I wonder if we can get it out on the extension side, if that might be the problem here. Or Kim Chapman just is not checking his email and he's got you in a spam box or something. So it could be that.
Easy does it there, buddy.
I sent it out to the 4-H list again. I thought I had emailed the extension list, but do you know what that is to send it on the listserv?
Yeah, I can get that to you, Jess. Or you can call
Okay.
it to Tammy. It's extension agent all or something. So Tammy upstairs on the 4th floor, she can tell you exactly which one to email it to.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So I'll send that out again just later today.
Perfect. Any other questions or